All right, so wow, it's my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today, who is Jim Over. I think we are all familiar with Jim. I think we all have a relationship with him. I don't think any of us would be here if it wasn't for Jim. I started working for Jim February 15th, 1990, after came to the Software Engineering Institute from IBM. And Jim was one of the most influential people in my career. He's had a long and distinguished career at the SEI. He led PSP and TSP, high maturity practices in general. He's won every award that you can win there. He's published extensively. He even got to write a book with Watts, Leadership, Teamwork, and Trust, which is the perfect book for him to write. So we were so excited when he agreed to be our keynote speaker and talk to us about his personal views on quality and how they relate to the challenges we face. So please join me in welcoming Jim Over. And Jim, let me know if you want me to just turn off the sharing, if you just rather see everybody, or how you want to do this.
I would rather see everybody than look at my picture.
Understood.
Yeah. So yeah, the title of this, Julie asked me for title, and I said quality ? And it's really answering the question, what inspires me, which is one of the questions that I was given to answer, or maybe what inspired me. And quality ? Was really sort of the expression of disbelief most of us had when our boss told us that we were going to solve the software crisis by focusing on process and quality. Because when I joined the SEI in '86, the big deal was the software crisis, an existential threat to national security. It was basically the exponential prediction for how much software the DoD would need by, say, 2000 in their systems was well beyond what anybody was capable of producing with existing resources. And the DoD and others were freaking out that, oh my God, we're going to fall behind. We'll have a software gap, right? So the conventional wisdom at the time, what most people at the SEI were focused on, were things like tools and software engineering environments, and there was some reuse work going on in the general research community. People were actually studying programming languages to see which programming languages had the highest productivity. Does that seem odd when you think about it? Like, yeah, I'm going to work in Java because I have the highest productivity in Java. It's like nobody even thinks of this kind of stuff anymore. But that's where everyone was. There was some talk about crowd control coming out of the NATO summit that was held prior to this, but basically it was all the computer scientists, no offense to any computer scientists here on the call, but doing what they do best, which is using software to solve their problems, so building tools and so forth. And Mr. Humphrey approached us with this thing about process and quality, and that was a very different idea then. Most of us had really not much experience with that. And many people at the SEI who didn't work for him were very skeptical whether any of this was going to work. Watts had been in IBM for OS 360 development, and also helped to fix quality problems with their chip manufacturing. And he had run into this concept of using process and quality to improve productivity by basically reducing rework and improving yield. And nobody thought it was going to work. But he persevered, as we all know. He built the program. He demonstrated the ideas of process maturity and process management and process capability and process assurance and process yield measures and so forth. And after a few years of demonstrating the results, the DoD decided to use the maturity model in the selection process. And what followed was widespread adoption of his original idea, the software process maturity framework. He got recognized for that, National Medal of Technology in 2003, now known as the father of software quality. And for me at that time, it was like a very inspiring environment to work in. Watts had this idea that he was going to change the world of software engineering, and he couldn't do it alone. He needed to work at a place where that was possible. And he chose the SEI because he thought that could happen. And it was that kind of a place in the 90s and maybe early 2000s. Very inspiring time, inspiring leader, and all of us doing that work pretty much felt empowered to go forward and fix these issues. And we didn't have funding concerns, and we had a leadership at the top that was very focused on trying to address these software challenges. And for me, it was really great. Probably the most inspiring time of my career. Watts stepped down in around 1991, I think it was, and became the first SEI fellow. Then he decided that he was going to focus on personal process kinds of things. I remember him coming back to the SEI to do a briefing where he talked about balancing his checkbook with a process and metrics, and he had defect measures and the whole 9 yards. And it was kind of silly, really. I mean, it seemed to many of us that he had sort of lost touch with what the big picture issues were. But thanks to his persistence, of course, he created the PSP. Julia and I and maybe a couple others at the SEI, I don't recall, took the first class in '94. And, it's basically the same principle scaled down to fit an organization of one. And oh my gosh, did it work. We got PSP training up and running in fact, I think, let's see, Brad, you were talking about just having taught a PSP fundamentals class. So some of that still continues, but the results were outstanding. Some of the organizations here were involved. We had 10 times or more reduction in post-deployment defect density. Organizations like, I think it was Teradyne, going from 2 defects per KLOC to 0.02 defects per KLOC in the field. 30% improvement in productivity. People finished early. Somebody from either the Air Force or the Navy, I think it was a Navy project, but it might have been an Air Force project, wound up finishing early and went back to the project manager and the contractor and said, hey, we're done early. That functionality we said we couldn't build, well, now we have time to build it. Do you want us to go ahead and do that, or just deliver what we have? And of course, things like that happened. They were just beyond belief at the time. This group is familiar with some of this, but in the early to late 90s, it was sort of an outrageous thing to be able to accomplish that. And I think having participated in that and having a real simple solution, or what I thought was a simple solution, you use a defined process, you measure it, you take the data to evaluate your results, you manage quality at every step. Just seemed like such a simple basis for making a big dent in some of the software issues that people were facing. And I'm really pleased to see that some of that still continues, but at the SEI, it became a little bit challenging at times, because essentially what I thought was easy and simple to do turned out to not be that way for most people. Compared to CMMI, it actually was a much harder sell to get people to change their behavior. And so a lot of what we had worked to accomplish, we sort of missed the mark in terms of what was transitionable or not, what people could really agree to do in order to accomplish these kinds of results. We worked with Microsoft, we worked with EDS, we had a project at Oracle. Not speaking too much out of turn, but that project, the results were so good in tests that they stopped the deployment and brought in expert testers from other parts of the organization, because they were sure, because they had found no bugs, something was wrong. So it was that kind of an unbelievable result. But we were not really able to overcome the resistance to change that would allow us to have the kind of widespread adoption that the CMM had had. And eventually less challenging methods emerged, things like agile and the whole community kind of shifted in that direction. So SEI in the end ultimately decided to move on. But that whole period was, and some of you were there, that was so incredible what we were seeing in terms of results.
Yeah.
I remember the first project was done at AIS, and Watts called me on the phone. We were anxious, I was anxiously awaiting the results. And he called me on the phone and interrupted a training class that I was teaching to let me know what had happened, what the actual outcomes were. That's how exciting it was. But if you don't use it, it won't work. And basically not enough people at that time were really interested in using it as it was packaged. And so the rails kind of came off and SEI stopped doing that. But another thing that Watts talked about, which was to me also critically important, was excellence. If you look at his first PSP book, the last chapter, last paragraph says, it's under a title, Your Future in Software Engineering. He says, in life, we reach the same end, so concentrate on the trip. Devote yourself to excellence and you just might achieve it. And I kind of think he was encouraging readers to use the PSP, but that's not the only way to improve. That's not the only way to achieve excellence. And kind of out of that work, moving forward, the Software Excellence Alliance has really taken up that mantle and really pushed forward these ideas of trying to ensure that software is considered to be important and not just good enough, but done in an excellent way. And in looking at what you guys have done since the kickoff, which I was at in 2019, things have really moved forward pretty far. I think the commitment to software excellence is clearly there, and I think you have a much better approach than my former employer. One of the benefits here is that participation is open to anyone. It's unconstrained by any kind of federal regulations or any kind of profit motive, and I think that's sort of where the SEI was in the beginning. We had a lot more funding, and we could just kind of provide capabilities without worrying about, where the money was going to come from. I like that the solution space is unconstrained. So we kind of had an obligation, even though it was the right thing to do, but to focus on process and quality. That's what Watts wanted to achieve. But here, the only requirement is to demonstrate that you're doing excellent software engineering. So having an unconstrained solution space allows a lot more ideas to flow into what the group is doing. I think that's also a big plus. You provide a venue where best practices can be presented, which is good, but it's not just presented in a conference setting or something. It's presented to discerning professionals who really know what good work looks like and really have an opportunity to appreciate it. So it's like, playing concert piano in front of a bunch of other concert pianists, or building or producing great wine and serving it to connoisseurs. This group has the ability to understand and fully appreciate what good work is. There's the forum for sharing, discussing, sort of distributing ideas, which is really great. But I think probably most important from what I can see is that opportunity to really recharge your commitment to excellence, get re-energized by participating in this group. And I think bottom line is this is a formula for success. It's survived this long, and I think it will continue and grow. So I was inspired by Watts. I was inspired by this unconventional idea of process and quality, which everybody here has kind of bought into. And I'm going to close with my congratulations for what you guys have accomplished, because it's really pretty amazing. Just look at the website, after from 2019 to 2022 and see the delta in what's been produced. And I also want to say it's really been my pleasure to address you all today. And it's my sincere hope that this was useful to you in some way. Thanks.